All right. Great to see everybody here tonight. Please be seated if you're standing. I'd like to welcome everybody to another teacher certification course of the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program. And if you work at this diligently, not only will you learn the peaceful solution and be practicing it in your own life, but you'll be helping others too, and truly working on bringing peace to this entire world. Okay, so we're in the respect unit tonight. There you go, right there on the overhead. And we'll be starting on page 164. We finished up with the majority of the this chapter. If you go back to the first page there. Developing a respectful reputation, working on a respectful reputation, and some of the things that you can do and some of the things that will hurt you if you don't do it, and so forth. And so tonight we're going to start out by looking at your respectful your reputation evaluation. A little bit of a tongue twister there, I guess. It says on the front there, take the following quiz to determine if your interactions are building a respectful reputation. Read the statements carefully and then check the answer that best describes the way you behave and interact with others. And, well, one of the things I want to mention, I'm sorry for those of you out there online, if this is your first class, you can go to, if you're on Facebook, you can go somewhere near the top up there and you can drop down and see all the units that you're available for download, and you can go ahead and download the respect unit if you like, and that way you'll have it in front of you. And just for those of you that here in this in Texas, which they call a lot of it desert, but there's a lot of it that's not, and some of it that's kind of mid-range, and you get around those those cedar trees at the right time of the year, and man, it's going to be spewing out some stuff if you breathe it. This is what it does to you, okay? A little bit of allergy there. Just to let you know, my voice isn't quite the same tonight, but all right, so our reputation evaluation. So this gives us an opportunity, if we're honest with ourselves, to review what our reputation looks like. Why do we want to do that? Well, we kind of want to know where we stand, right? So we know what to work on. And, you could also get a little, I guess, a little help from others. But this one is our own personal reputation evaluation, And so, like I said, if you're honest with yourself and mark always, sometimes, or never, depending upon how often this particular thing takes place, then you can look back and get a real look at how you are and what you should do to change it. And we'll talk about evaluating it on the next page, on page 165. But let's do this. Okay, so the first one is, I use a respectful tone of voice when speaking to others. Well, be honest about it. And I don't know how many people could always say always, but if it is, then by all means put it down there. But always means always. If you use a respectful tone of voice when speaking to others, but sometimes you find yourself blurting something out and, rude and aggressive and everything, well, you might be wanting to mark sometimes. And then if you just don't even care about how people perceive you and your reputation when talking to others, and how you're helping others to feel, you could mark never. That I don't recommend that one, unless of course that's the truth. Then go ahead and mark it, because this is for you to look at. I'm not going to come out there and look at what you've got, and we're not asking anyone online to send it in to us or anything at this point. So let's take a look at it. All right. The number 2 is, I address those in authority by their proper titles. Now, if you were in the military, it's my understanding that if you're in the military, that you would always be addressing your superior officer with those in authority over you, and possibly even those that aren't there for your day-to-day activities, but are in the armed services in the military. But addressing those in authority by their proper titles, that you would be calling them by their rank, sergeant, captain, lieutenant, etc. Well, it's like that. Like your teacher in you're in elementary school or junior high or something, and your teacher, you would want to call them, Mr. Jones or Mrs. Jones or whatever their actual title might be. I notice a lot of times doctors are very particular on that. They want to be called, Dr. Jones rather than Mr. Jones. That's if their name is Jones, that is. So I address those in authority by their proper titles, and that would be always, sometimes, or once again, never. Excuse me. I refrain from using vulgar language and put-downs when I'm angry. Now, that doesn't mean that you refrain from doing it when you're angry, but when you're not angry, you go ahead and do it. That's not what that means. It just means that when you get angry, and when a lot of people tend to bust off and do those things, it's asking you, do you do it? Always, sometimes, or never. I refrain from using vulgar language and put-downs when I'm angry. Always, sometimes, or never. So these are thought provokers, It's not often that we sit and really go through. We should do it more often, but I would say it's not often that people sit down and really go through these things and take an honest look at themselves to see where they can change, but we should. I would say, minimum of, once a day would be great, or even more, but okay, here's another one. I ask permission before using the belongings of others. And as was mentioned in a recent class, I think it might have been Catan, talking about when going out to some of the schools and teaching, it's amazing how many people knew the basic answer to this. I ask permission before using the belongings of others. This thing of using the belongings of others without asking, it's amazing how many students actually knew the answer to this. I would say it had to be 75% would blurt out, "That's stealing," Higher than that. William's telling me, no, it's higher than that, and it probably is. I mean, I just remember hearing almost everybody saying, "That's stealing," and we were really amazed that they actually knew this, but they didn't seem to be practicing it very well, And isn't that the case in a lot of these things? I know that the STOP acronym, a lot of people know that STOP acronym, to stop and think and consider your options and proceed with the right choice. But how many people actually use that in their life each and every day and practice that and base their life upon it? But anyway, so let's get back to the question. I ask permission before using the belongings of others. Now, that's always, sometimes, or never. And please, when you're answering, to be honest with yourself, don't put always if it isn't always. I mean, if you do it most of the time, don't put always, put sometimes. It's if you do it always. If you've gotten to this point of you're not ever going to let that thing occur, then go ahead and put always. You don't use anyone's belongings without asking permission first. If you're there, you're there. If you're not, would put always. But always, sometimes, or never. And we're not condemning anyone or saying anything bad about anybody. This is for you to look at and judge for yourself what you need to change in your life. I am helpful to and considerate of others. This could be something as simple as helping someone do their job. And when I say that, I mean if their job somehow encompasses the need of something from you, instead of making it hard on them and making their life miserable, cough it up. Tell them what they need to know or do what they need you to do if it's within the guidelines and specifications of that job and you're not hurting yourself, others, or the environment or property, right? To do otherwise would be inconsiderate and not helpful. But there you go. I'm helpful to and considerate of others, and that's always, sometimes, or never. I choose not to wear revealing or inappropriate clothing. There you go again. Always, sometimes, or never. Now, this doesn't mean in your own house when you're getting ready to go to sleep or something. Excuse me. And of course, at times you wouldn't have revealing clothing on, for instance, but it means that where others can see you. I choose not to wear revealing or inappropriate clothing where others can see you. You would put always, sometimes, or never. I obey instructions with a positive attitude. Okay? Well, if you get instructions and you walk away grumbling and saying, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about, and, so forth, or even after the fact, maybe you go off initially and start doing it, and then later on you start grumbling or something, well, then, you're not doing it with a positive attitude. And remember, which we show this little slide sometimes, it says attitude is everything. It is. You can have a positive attitude or a negative attitude, and it shows. You don't flip it on and off like a switch. It's within you. It's what you work on. It's what you practice daily is what shows up, even if you don't know it's showing up. If you have a negative, pessimistic attitude about things, I guarantee you other people know that already. You don't have to tell them because they already know. On the other hand, if you have a positive, optimistic attitude, people know that too. You're a joy to be around, you're uplifting and encouraging, and have the idea to get the job done. I complete all tasks to the best of my ability. Always, sometimes, or never. Now, that's a huge one right there. If you're a perfectionist, you might not answer that always. You might not even answer it sometimes. You might put never. I don't know. I complete all tasks to the best of my ability. I know some perfectionists, and they really think that they never achieve success on what they're trying to do, for the most part. I avoid all risk-taking behaviors such as premarital sex and substance abuse. That's always, sometimes, or never. And I would really hope that most people are in the always column on a lot of these things. I make positive choices regardless of what my friends choose to do. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. Peer pressure is a big deal, and conformity and so forth. So that's always, sometimes, or never. I choose friends who are positive, moral, and respectful. Always, sometimes, or never. You might choose a friend and find out later on. Of course, we should really try to find out on the front end as much as we can, but sometimes you'll be surprised and later on find out that friend wasn't who you thought they were. On the other hand, we might even see somebody we thought wasn't somebody that was friend material, and later on find out that, hey, they're okay. I choose friends who are positive, moral, and respectful. Always, sometimes, or never. I can control my response even when I'm being disrespected. That one there is a big one, isn't it? Get that? I can control my response even when I'm being disrespected. Now, if your thought of control is, you can chew them up and spit them out and cut them down to about this tall, when they're disrespecting you, you probably need to readjust and think of another way here. But I can control my response even when I'm being disrespected, always, sometimes, or never. And I avoid stereotyping or prejudging others. Ooh-wee. That's a big one there too. I avoid stereotyping or prejudging others. Stereotyping is easy to do just merely by looking at someone and how they're dressed and so forth, which, keep in mind, those first impressions are important because people see you, and within the first several seconds they're making these judgments and putting a label on you, if you will. And depending upon your color or how you're dressed, if you're tall or short or what have you, people could be stereotyping you as to fit in a certain category or nationality or ethnicity and so forth. I find peaceful ways to resolve conflicts rather than using violent and aggressive behavior. I find peaceful ways to resolve conflicts rather than using violent and aggressive behavior, always, sometimes, or never. And I really hope that for those of us that have been in the peaceful solution for some time, been really practicing, I would hope that's an always right there. Violent and aggressive behavior is a no-no. Okay, let's move on. Again, excuse me for a little bit of coughing and stuff there. You know, these allergies are tough. Room for improvement. Okay. Now, we've talked about room for improvement before, how you have to, give yourself a little bit of room. Don't kick yourself so much. Yeah, go ahead and kick yourself once maybe, but just to get you started in the right direction. But you gotta back off and give yourself some room to grow, room for improvement, and rather than wasting your time kicking yourself and beating yourself up and woe is me and having a pity party, it's best to get this thing turned around, whatever occurred, correct it as much as you can, apologize, and get on the right track, So, evaluating your evaluation. So we just did that evaluation. That's your evaluation of yourself. So how did you do? Well, the ideal response for all the statements is always. Okay? Yeah? That's the ideal response. And it'd be great if we could all do that. And someday we probably can, if we stay with it long enough, okay? Always indicates that you consistently demonstrate respectful interactions in those particular areas. Sometimes or never answers should be taken very, very seriously. It means that these are areas you need to focus on and change in order to build a positive, respectful reputation. So the sometimes or never answers should be taken very seriously. And really those never answers, I'm going to tell you, they need to change right away. You need to be at least trying and practicing. Remember, practice is where it's going to come in. When you consciously, with a concerted effort, you practice doing things right, then along the way, when the heat is on, in the pressure of the moment, guess what? Then it's going to come into play and it's going to take over, and you're going to do the right thing without having so much turmoil trying to do it, okay? All right, so C is for change, which begins with you. And although it might not be easy to change your reputation, it can be done with determination and discipline. The worst thing anyone can do is have a nobody's perfect, so why try to change attitude. In fact, you can show that you value your life by actively seeking ways to change and improve yourself. Now, you see that? The nobody's perfect, so why try to change attitude? It reminds me of one that would go along with it. I was recently reminded of is it's easier to ask forgiveness than it is to ask permission. You heard that one before? Yeah, I think all of us have. And indeed, it's easier to ask forgiveness than it is to ask permission. Sometimes you might not find that it's so easy, but that's the old saying right there, and that kind of goes along with this nobody's perfect, so why even try attitude. Why should I even try to ask? They always say no, but you can show that you value your life by actively seeking ways to change and improve yourself, which is what you're doing now. If you're sitting here in this room right now if you're on the TV or on the internet, and you are then actively seeking to change some things in your life right now, that's great. So, chalk it up. You can only begin to make changes for the better to improve your character and reputation if you are, and get this word, willing to examine your thoughts, attitudes, and actions. And that's what this is about on the reputation evaluation on the other page. Is you have to be willing excuse me, to be honest. You have to be willing to be honest and put those things down how they really are, how they really exist, Excuse me. All right, in this way you can progress and develop your full potential as a unique individual. And one of the things that we find out in the Peaceful Solution, whether you know it or not, is each one of us is unique. We are the only, I'm the only me, you're the only you. Everybody is unique, not only in the way they look and the way they act and their mindset about things and their intelligence, everything you can imagine. Everybody is unique. Nobody is exactly the same. So that puts us in a really interesting place, doesn't it? Out of all the billions of people that have ever lived, trillions of people that have ever lived on this earth, and of all life, really, when you think about it, you're unique. You're the only one of you. That's really amazing. So you have something that nobody else has. If you can keep that in your head, and keep in mind that everybody has a purpose in life too. Don't think you never have a purpose, because you do. So, but to develop this, you need to learn the Peaceful Solution and be practicing these things. So you've already made an important first step in improving your interaction and reputation by completing the evaluation form. The next step is to focus on what you'd like to start improving or changing. This is going to involve a little bit of the stuff you might have marked over here on the other page. For example, if you check that you sometimes complete all tasks and obligations to the best of your ability, then this is one area that you would need to focus on. See, it's if you check that you sometimes complete, right? You sometimes do it. So you could focus on that. You could focus on it right away. The next step is to make plans to change by listing how your behavior affects others, and remembering that there is a ripple effect to everything that we do. It ripples outwards, and we don't even know where it goes. Might be one day we will. But how it affects your reputation and what changes you need to make to eliminate negative behavior and replace it with positive behavior. Okay, on page 166, using 2 of your sometimes or never answers, complete the worksheet below to change and improve the way you interact with others. Follow the example as a guide. So here's the example, and then I'm going to put this on the overhead for people to see, and for those of you that don't have a book in front of you, and maybe you can take a look and answer some of them too in your mind, or put it on a piece of paper or something. Okay, so one of the examples is the behavior I need to change is completing all tasks to the best of my ability. Okay, so you look back over here and you look and see down there a little over halfway it says I complete all tasks to the best of my ability. If you marked it sometimes or never, then you would want to put, that could be one of the ones you put in this particular place. Okay, number 2, in what ways does this behavior affect others? And so you've got to come with something. They are not able to depend on me to fulfill my obligations. It can also cause others to be frustrated and annoyed. This is some suggestions. This behavior affects my reputation by, and so you'd want to answer that. How does it affect your reputation of not being able to complete all the tasks to the best of your ability? Well, it could cause others to see you as unreliable, for sure. I can change this behavior by, okay, how can you change that completing all tasks? Well, you can become more responsible and carefully doing all tasks to the best of your ability. So I'm going to put this on the overhead for just a moment. And we'll see if we can get in there just a little bit more. I'm going to focus on A right there. Okay, can everybody see that? So if you don't have a book, really honestly answer that question. Write it on a piece of paper, answer it in your mind real quick, and then go to number 2 and 3 and 4. And I'm going to leave that up there for just a minute while you look at it, okay? Just look at it and decide what you're going to put there, and we'll focus on some of the answers there, okay? Okay, have you had an opportunity? Okay, so the behavior I need to change is, put something in there, and in what way does the behavior affect others? Hope you thought about it a moment. And then this behavior affects my reputation by, what's the deal? And then I can change it by doing this. And by taking your Peaceful Solution book, you should find plenty of ways you can help to change that particular behavior, okay? So it gives you a couple areas there you can work on it, and hope you do. Write something down and check it out. Be honest with yourself. Let's go on over to page 167. Excuse me. Page 167, and this is straight talk. Keep in mind that family members, teachers, friends, and classmates might not notice right away that you're trying to change. Now, isn't that interesting? You know why? Because you probably have a reputation already of having done things a certain way, and they expect a certain thing to come from you, and it takes time for people to really see that change. They might notice a little something and say, hey, yeah, that was kind of different for him, and then a little ways down the road, maybe another week or so goes by, and they're like, wow, that's the second time. Man, you know what, he's actually being nice to me now. So it takes a little bit of time, but you got to keep on. Just keep on. It'll come. You'll see that people are talking to you differently also based upon how you were talking to them and what they can expect from you, that interaction. So changing your reputation will take time, effort, and self-control. And don't forget self-control. Self-control is that foundation. You've got to have self-control to do any of this. I mean, that's just the way it is. You can't do it without that discipline that it takes from self-control. So don't give up. The truth is, although it's great to have people notice your efforts and encourage you to continue trying, praise and recognition from others should not be your only motivation to change. It should be for yourself and for others. It shouldn't be just for the praise and recognition and people, you hearing people say, oh man, you sure have changed, or man, you sure are really kind to people now and everything. I mean, it should be more than that. It's up to you to choose to have respect for yourself and others and to build a respectful reputation because it is the right thing to do, and that's the way why you would want to do it. Eventually, others will see your efforts and your reputation will change for the better. In the meantime, set your mind in advance. Oh, have you ever heard that before? Set your mind in advance, right? Set your mind in advance. What you're going to do the next time that situation comes up. Set your mind in advance and be determined to consistently make choices that are moral and respectful. And that's the way that the reputation is going to change. Whether it's reputation changing for the worse or for the better, we want it to change for the better, of course. But, along the way, you got to keep in mind, too, there's a few reputation busters out there, okay? So let's look on page 167, about halfway, and it talks about reputation busters. Another important aspect of building your positive reputation is be careful not to tear down someone else's. You don't have to answer this question, but I'm going to ask this to you. Can you think of why? Without looking ahead, can you think of why you wouldn't want to tear down someone else's reputation? You're working on your own, and it says be careful not to tear down someone else's. Why would that be so? Who cares? Who cares about them, man? I'm working on my reputation. Think about it just a minute. Okay. People's reputations can be easily destroyed when others falsely accuse or spread rumors about them. So, wow, that's big. If you're tearing down people's reputations and falsely accusing and spreading rumors about them, are you showing respect to that person? Are you showing true care and concern? Are you treating others the way you want to be treated? Taking part in these reputation busters will not only destroy someone else's reputation or possibly cause someone who is trying to change to become frustrated and give up. It has actually caused people to commit suicide too. When you tear down someone's reputation, it's a big deal. But eventually it will damage your reputation as well. You see, people seldom realize that while they are spreading rumors about others, they are also revealing some of their own negative character traits. And I know one of the things that was told me long, long ago was, be careful of that person that's telling you everything about somebody else, because they're probably telling it about you too. Whenever you leave the room, you just heard all the stories about what so-and-so did and what so-and-so does and how horrible they are and everything. You leave the room and then they're telling somebody how horrible you are and what you did and what you're doing and so forth, So, and that's proven to be true. It doesn't seem that people that do that kind of thing is very discriminatory. They pretty much do it to everybody, except themselves, but I think a lot of people can see through it. Something else that's a reputation buster too, and this would involve some outside influences, but in your self-control unit on page 130, there's a section, well, there's a lot about influences throughout the book, but particularly on 130 right there is conformity and peer pressure. Now, one of the things to keep in mind is that you can be working on having a great reputation, or you could even have a great reputation of being trustworthy, honest, reliable, and so forth. And if you start getting in with the wrong crowd and you just once or twice slack up, you're not on guard, and you slack up on what you're doing, and you do something negative, then that in itself is busting down. That is an item that will help bust your reputation faster than anything. But conformity is a normal part of the way we live and function, and this is somewhere in that second paragraph. But in order to stay in business, to make a profit, automobile manufacturers, clothing manufacturers, all this stuff, they need to conform to popular trends and styles. That's how they make their money. But what you're willing to conform to is based on your character, your values, and how you're influenced. And this is why this is being mentioned here, is because it is an influence. For example, a certain designer has a popular line of clothes, but you value your appearance and staying up to date with the latest fashions, you're influenced to buy those clothing. Well, by this, you've just conformed to the standard of what's popular. But peer pressure is one type of influence that plays an important role in what you will conform to. All right? It's negative and positive. It has a major effect on your character. If you don't think that you're influenced by your peers, then consider the following scenario. And it gives one about it gives one about, you're hanging out with some friends and they want to go somewhere, and everyone says yes except for you. You'd rather just go home. But instead of speaking up, you agree to go because, everyone else is doing it. So nobody wants to do what you want to do, and so forth. But you go ahead, because that's peer pressure. Even though, and it goes on to say that a lot of it we do to ourselves too. If you've had similar experiences when you're well acquainted with what it feels like to put aside your own likes and dislikes in order to be part of that group, okay? And on the next page, on 131, it goes into that. It's important to understand that peer pressure is not necessarily an external force. It's actually the pressure that we put on our own selves to feel accepted and fit in, okay? So I wanted to bring that up because when you're working on your reputation, on having a positive reputation, you need to be guarded. You need to stay on track. You need to pay attention to what you're doing and don't let anybody pull you away. So, that's the influences and the peer pressure that can take place that turn into reputation busters. But in this last particular paragraph, it was kind of talking about people busting down someone's reputation, but they can do this just by influencing you. Let's take a closer look. I hope everybody understood that. I wanted to add that little part in there. But so on page 167 again, back in our respect unit, let's take a closer look. To falsely accuse someone is to hold that person accountable for something that they did not say or do. To falsely accuse someone, they didn't say or they didn't do whatever it is you're reporting. By reporting information that's based on opinion, you can make false accusations that are based on assumptions and not proven facts. For example, you see a friend being driven downtown in a police car. You assume that he's broken the law and has been arrested. You immediately call several of your mutual friends and report what you've seen. Is it a fact that your friend was arrested? No, you don't know that. The only thing you know for a fact was that he was in a police car. The fact is your friend's uncle is a police officer who was giving him a ride in the squad car. When reporting information, you must be careful to report exactly what you see or hear and not your interpretation. Because our interpretations are skewed. Depending upon what we've been through, what environment we grew up in, whether we've been in a police car for whatever reason, whether we've been in one or not, our idea of everything is skewed. So we have to just look at what we saw. That's hard to do sometimes because you want to give your opinion. You want to feel, I don't know, somehow important to be able to stress that you have knowledge about this situation so you don't feel like you're unknowledgeable and the other person, you don't want the other person to know that you're not knowledgeable about the situation. If you were asked about it, and you go on about it and start, spouting off all that stuff, think about the reasons why you do it. It's to feel important to some degree. Or you might be doing it on purpose and you might be wanting to bring harm to the other person. Whatever the case, you need to adjust what you're doing, what we're doing. Falsely accusing someone makes you a false witness and a reputation buster. Okay? Okay, turn on over to page 168, please. Okay. Excuse me. All right. The time that's used to destroy someone's reputation could be better spent developing your own. Wow, what a statement, huh? So in all that time that you were destroying someone else's reputation, you could have been working on your own. Maybe you could have been doing that quiz that we just did, the reputation evaluation. You could have been doing that in the time you decided to cut somebody down. A rumor is someone's opinion that is accepted and passed on to others as a fact. Get that? A rumor is someone's opinion or they might know what they're doing. I did know somebody that did stuff like that, where when the heat was on them for something, then they would start a rumor about somebody else that got everybody's attention over on the other person and got it off them. Isn't it funny that I see that taking place in the media all the time today too? Maybe you have. Well, one dangerous aspect about rumors is that the more they're spread, the worse they become. By the time the rumor has run its course, it's many times worse than when it first started. Have you ever done that thing to where, there's a circle of people and you whisper something to somebody and then they repeat it to the next person and then that person repeats it to the next person? If you've got 10 people in that group, by the time it gets back around, you flew to the moon, exploded the place, and came back here for dinner, or something crazy, it really does get way out of hand. It never comes back the same because people aren't listening completely. So it'll be many times worse. So gossiping, now, so we know what a rumor is. I'm sorry. By the time it's run its course, it's many times worse than it started. If someone tries to tell you a rumor about someone or something, politely but firmly refuse to listen. That's hard to do, especially if it's somebody in authority that's doing the rumors. If someone in authority is passing these rumors on to you, it's very hard to refuse to listen to that. Sometimes you just have to change the subject or find a reason to excuse yourself for some kind of emergency reason. Gossiping is to spread false accusations, rumors, or guess what? Get this, even facts about us. What? You mean telling something that's true is considered gossip? For real? Yeah. Yes, telling something that is true about someone without that person's consent is gossiping. For example, and here's one that, could make it a little more easy to understand. You tell your best friend that your sister's getting married. Now, what could possibly be wrong with that? Doesn't everybody do that? I mean, someone they know is getting married, don't they tell, hey, so-and-so's getting married, right? So-and-so's having a child, right? Or so-and-so won $1 million, right? And so even though something might be true, it's still gossip. But so in this case, you tell your best friend that your sister's getting married. The next day, your friend tells everyone at school. Now everybody knows. How would that make you feel? Upset? Annoyed? Betrayed? Those are all appropriate responses, especially if you told them, I'm just telling you. I'm not supposed to tell anybody, but I'm telling you. The only time it is acceptable to repeat a private matter is if you're told it's okay. Anything other than that is gossiping. Just think, what if the marriage didn't take place? What if that was just something that was planned for a moment, but we got canceled the next day, and then everyone's coming up to her saying, "Oh, congratulations! I hear you're getting married." She's boo, starts crying because it's all broke up. I mean, just think of the possibilities of the ripple effect that could take place on and on and on. Mom and dad find out about it. So you're getting married, huh? Well, you're only 17. Were you planning on eloping or what? Just something to think about. The many things that could take place just by mentioning to somebody something that you didn't have permission to. So this goes back to like our stop sign, for instance. Stop. Remember the STOP acronym? Stop, think, consider your options, and proceed with the right choice, right? It goes back to that. Always put your brain in gear before opening your mouth. Think about these things of what could occur before you do it. Yeah, you're wanting to tell somebody because someone gave you this information that only you know. And so you're busting at the seams to share it with somebody, and surely you can trust your best friend. But if you put your brain in gear and start thinking about all these, ripples that could take place, all the negative things that could possibly take place, you might consider, hey, let me just back off this thing. I was told not to tell anybody. Let me just not tell anybody, okay? and then you're safe. And you've shown respect. So straight talk down here at the bottom. To avoid damaging someone's reputation and ultimately your own, so remember we've been talking about these reputation busters, because we want to maintain this character, you know, the right thing, doing the right thing. To avoid damaging someone's reputation and ultimately your own, think about everything before it comes out of your mouth, especially if it concerns someone else. Remember that old saying, if you can't say something nice about someone, then don't say anything at all? That's a huge deal, isn't it? If you can't say something nice about someone, don't say anything about them at all. Before you speak, stop and ask yourself, is what I am about to say likely to damage someone's reputation? Is it gossip or a false accusation? Now, if you're sitting there answering, yeah, it is, and you're wanting it to be that way, because there are people like that. They start the rumors, they do the gossip, they do all this stuff in order to cause turmoil, in order to hurt somebody else, in order to break somebody down so they can more easily take advantage of them. So they do it on purpose. But that means they're not trying to make peace. They might be thinking they're trying to make peace, but they're not. You can't make peace by not making peace, okay? By breaking someone down and ruining someone's life, you're not going to make hundreds of other people's lives better. It's just not going to occur because you've already shown your character. You've already shown your reputation. You've already shown what you do. It's not the only time in your life you're going to do it. You're probably going to do it a lot to all those hundreds of people, you know? Thousands or millions, whatever. So if you can answer yes to any of these questions, then what you have to say is not worth repeating or mentioning. Find something else to talk about that could help build that person's reputation. By supporting and encouraging others to improve their character and their reputation, you will improve yours as well. Remember that? The negative person, the pessimistic person, as compared to the optimist, the positive person. If you're positive and supportive and encouraging about folks, then those that you talk to and those that are around you and those you've talked about or not talked about or whatever, by encouraging them, you will see your reputation as a positive person grow. You will see your reputation as a person that can be trusted. You'll see that reputation grow. You'll see the reputation grow as people can trust you and find that you're honest and reliable and all these things. And eventually, sometimes it takes a long time, but eventually, whatever the false accusations and all that stuff will be seen through by everybody, because it will eventually occur to you too. You might be thinking, oh, I'm privileged to have this information about this person, you know. But you might find later on down the road that the same person's been giving out information about you too, and now you're suffering the consequences also. And and eventually, you know, I mean, it can ruin people's lives. People have lost their jobs, people have lost their positions, people have lost their lives, their families, all because of this very thing: gossip, rumors, and talking about people. Negative talk. Evil, negative talk. That's what it is. Constantly talking bad about people. Make sure of what you're listening to. Yeah, in fact, let me see if I can find this page. Oh, boy. Well, hang on just a second. There's one other thing I wanted to... I think I lost it. Okay, well. All right. is kind of important. All right, well, I don't have it. Sorry. Let's turn to page 169. Let's go back. I'm sorry. Let's go back and look at the lesson plan for a minute. I actually meant to start off with that, and I got a little sidetracked. I apologize. We were actually at the point of we started on page 164. That was at the end of procedure 6. And so when we got done with that, we should have taken a look at procedure number 7. Now, I'd looked at this, but I neglected to stop and go over this with you, the teachers or the teachers in training, which this is part of it. You should go over it. You should have the guide in your mind, the lesson plan in your mind. So procedure number 7 was and is, tell students that in addition to evaluating their interactions with others, remember we talked about the interactions and communication, it showed the handshake in the picture from the last class. You must also be willing to change any behavior that is negative in order to improve your reputation. And that's the key thing. You've got to be willing. You've got to be willing to change any of that behavior. If you're not willing, it's not going to work. No one can make you. It says to have students read the section Room for Improvement found on 165 and 166, which we did, and complete the accompanying exercise. Have students read Straight Talk found on page 167, which is, what we've done. In fact, we moved on to page 168, in fact. Explain that improving one's reputation takes self-control and determination, which we did. We talked about self-control and setting your mind in advance and, really wanting to make this change. And so on into procedure number 8, this carries through. Explain to students that in addition to evaluating their reputations and changing their behavior, they must also be careful not to take part in gossiping or spreading false accusations about others. Stress that in addition to damaging someone else's reputation, they can also damage their own. And yes, it will. People will eventually find you out. Have students turn to page 167 and 168. Read the section Reputation Busters. We have. Stress that by using self-control to evaluate what they say about others and being mindful of the effect it can have on that person's reputation, they are demonstrating great care and concern for others. So, the great care and concern for others, and by using this self-control, and remember it said to evaluate what you say about others. Remember, use your brain first, kick your brain in gear before you open your mouth. That's all part of that right there. And so then it gives the example of an activity that you could do, which I highly recommend if you have the right environment to do so. And it actually mentions the whisper right there too. Instruct the captains to whisper the statement to the next person, have it to the next person, until you come around to the end and see what you were told. I'm pretty sure most people in this room have probably done that before. I mean, a lot of y'all are, I don't know if any of the young men over there have or not, but, you whisper a statement to somebody, keeping it short and simple, and it goes around to about 8 or 10 people, comes back around, and you see what's being said then. You'll be amazed at what comes out of the mouth of everybody, really. So then moving back over here to page 169, now, we're not going to be playing the poem on the audio CD at this time, but I am going to read this to you, if I can talk. All right, my reputation. Character is the foundation of my reputation. It's being respectful in every situation. So you see there's a lot of foundations. There's the foundation of building a moral character, and that foundation, you've got to have self-control. It's not going to work otherwise. But so the character in itself is the foundation of your reputation. It involves all these things: character, your values, how you practice self-control, your attitude about yourself and others, and so forth. It's being respectful in every situation. It's being disciplined and determined to do all that is moral, honest, and true. It's the way I speak, act, and walk. It's how I interact, dress, and talk. It's up to me to make moral choices, to choose not to be influenced by negative voices. Remember, guarding against peer pressure, negative peer pressure, guarding against negative conformity, guarding against negative influences. To consider the consequence of my action, to examine each and every option. To avoid making decisions that are wrong, I will stand firm on what's right and be strong. Knowledge is what I will pursue. I'll test and prove those things that are true. I'll practice self-control to find a peaceful solution, and this is how I will build my reputation. So there's a couple things in there that if we listen to the audio CD, if we had it, it kind of goes along pretty catchy. Of course, it's a poem, and they read it a lot better than I did. But you can get the gist of it, how it kind of helps you remember. The next section that we'll be moving on to, in the next class is going to be page 170, and that's titled What I Have Learned. And so there's certain high points of this last chapter that we'll go through just to reiterate and refresh in our minds. Chris should be the next teacher, and that'll be on the 27th. That'll be at 5:30 p.m. on the 27th. That's Sunday at 5:30 p.m. And bring your books, bring your spec units, and for those of you that are online, download that stuff. You can do it right now, and you'll be able to go wherever you need to go to follow along with the lesson. So I appreciate everyone being here tonight. Be on guard about all that weather out there too. The heat's really strong, and take care of yourselves, and thank you for coming. Appreciate it.